Hello YouTube, I'm Elwirfy and today we're playing, or I guess discussing, the game of diplomacy. So today we're going to be talking about France. They have the second highest win rate generally. Obviously those win rates can change depending on who you play with. But France is the second easiest to play, Russia being the first easiest. So today we're going to be talking about France's opening moves. Again, keeping in mind this is from an objective mathematical standpoint and not necessarily fully dependent on diplomacy. So this entire little circle here of England, Germany, and France is probably the most complicated part of the game. The other side of the world isn't as bad to manage because there's less moves physically able to make. So France has the advantage of having resources behind it. Oh, you can't see that? Hold on. Let me, this position looks much better. Mostly. Hold on. I want to make sure you guys can really see everything from a French perspective. So, France perspective. So, we have a unit here. There's a space in between these two. There's a space here, there, just in case it's hard for anyone to see what's going on. Yeah, because there's a space there. So, what is France wanting to do? France should ideally always be getting 2 units at the beginning of the next, during the build phase. So, what are some? Let me go over the classic moves for you. Assuming Italy's nice, you can actually get 3. What you can do is you can say Marseille is going to go to Spain, the Mid-Atlantic Ocean, or the fleet from Brest is going to go into the Mid-Atlantic Ocean, and Paris is moving to Burgundy. That's the best place for it to go because you're defending Marseille and Paris. If you, as France, see an Italian move of Venice to Piedmont and Rome to Venice, then what you know is that you have to attack here to make a bounce happen for sure, and it means that you might consider doing the Portugal move and just holding with Spain instead of another common move, which is to go Portugal, Spain on the south, and then take the south coast. This is if you're doing a more Italian focused build, and that's typical. This is how you get 2, and then France would often build, depending on what you're doing, you might build, because there would be a bounce, a fleet, and that's how what you're trying to set up for if you're going for an Italian attack. But let's say you're not doing that. Let's say you're just doing you want to get the typical, and say you're working with England, right? England is your easiest ally, and if you want to have the highest success rate, you should be teaming up with England. However, you can team up with Germany, and we'll talk about that too. But why is England the easiest to team up with? Well, you both control the left side, just like how we talked about on the Russian and Turkey side. It's like a second juggernaut, but it's not as successful because of the multitude of ways you can get hurt. So as France, you're actually you're getting less out of the double deal than England. England benefits more from a French ally than France allies from England, but it's very close. It's very close. So say you're working with England, and your first 2 moves, well, they're pretty typical. What you could do is you could say, I'm going to have Brest go into Mid-Atlantic, Paris goes to Picardy, signaling. So here's the difference, right? So you're signaling that you're going to Belgium, and then Marseille will go to Spain. Fine, right? You're thinking fine, great. Again, this is different than being here, because here you're saying, I'm going to bounce here, I'm not going to go for Belgium. What you would do in this alliance, if you're working with England, you're saying, hey, I'm going to go my army attack here. If Italy has guys there, if Italy's doing this move that way, then you know as France that you're safe, in which case you do the swap, just mathematically, that's how you do it. Assuming you're attacking Italy, and you do want your fleets going this way, because England needs to have control of that upper half, if you want to have a good alliance with England. Right? So what you're doing is you're saying, what you would do, if you really want to have a strong English alliance, is you tell England to go English Channel North Sea, you tell them to convoy North Sea to Holland, and then to support movement into Belgium. That's the way, in my opinion, and that'd be second move, obviously. This would be the second move, or it might look like this, depending on what Italy does. So, depending on what Italy does, you're either in this position, or you're in this position. Not the end of the world. But what you're doing here is you're essentially saying, hey, England, I know you only get 1 move, right? Because this would be their first move to go to Yorkshire, to go to Yorkshire. So you're essentially saying, hey, what's the plan here? Well, what you're doing is you're saying, England, I want you to sacrifice your 1, and then what happens is it's all freed up, so you could do a whole new build. Actually, you might go army there. That might be a little better. That's up to you. But essentially, that's how France would get its 6 in the most ideal world. Now, that's not going to happen because England would not... England shouldn't be letting France get 6. More typically, France gets 5, which is completely fine. There's nothing wrong with getting 5 as France. So what is England doing, essentially, on its first turn? A typical English move that says it wants to be a... Here's the problem. First move, England goes here, you go there, there, and there. That's a typical French first move. England goes there, they move from Liverpool to Yorkshire, and they go from Edinburgh to North Sea. The risky part is that you don't know if your English player will go to Brest, convoy to Norway, maintaining their North Sea presence. Right? So what you're saying is you're taking that risk. So that's why if you move to Picardy, you're saying, hey, I want to be able to attack. So either, because generally this is a typical German setup, this is how the Germans would look if they're doing the standard opening. What you're saying is, hey, I want to go into Belgium, but then France could just go here, bounce, and then this is how the board would look. Not quite as good, because then you'd have, you'd presumably bounce or just stay there. I mean, heck, you could get 1 if Italy isn't sitting here, or if Italy sits here but then doesn't move that. You walk in there, you only get 1 build, and you have nowhere to build it. So you actually miss out. So France can get screwed over pretty easily, which is why it's common to see Brest sit here and then attack back, or Brest sit here. Again, so English Channel's rough, so you need to have good diplomacy. If you can have a strong enough diplomacy for England to not come into Brest, you can technically, more likely what England would ask you to do is to support his fleet going in there, so that way you each get 2, you build a fleet here, army here. That is also a reasonable way to do France. Now that's assuming you have an English alliance, and that's assuming the English have agreed to help you against the Germans. So what if you wanted to ally with Germany? Well, that's an interesting one. In my opinion, you need Italy or Austria or Russia. In my opinion, you need someone else to help if you're going to ally with Germany. Because if Italy is fighting you, but these are allies, it makes it a little complicated because of certain backstabs. But so you're in this position. You start out from the get-go, right? You're like, I want to be allies with Germany. Well, what you might say as a French player is, I want you to block the English from doing, a typical English move of going after you. If you don't trust your English player, right? What you do as France is you go English Channel, you go to Picardy, and you go to Spain. What you're saying is, with the German player, you're saying, hey, I want you to do Holland, Kiel, and Ruhr, standard stuff. So that way, if England did something like this, which is signaling a northern route, you now have significant access to the English land, which forces them to move in different ways. They'd probably convoy this over, and they might have this guy go to like northern Atlantic or something to get around. And that's one way you could do it. Another way is, so you have the 2 moves. And this is assuming you have a fleet in Holland. So what you're doing is, by putting the fleet in Holland, you're saying that you're going to be able to move out into here and convoy over. I know you can do the same thing for Denmark, but for Holland, because say this is first move Germany, right? You're set up in this position. If they did this, you're saying, hey, what if they go Denmark to there? Well, that's a bad idea because they'll bounce, get nothing. They would just get the 1, or they might end up going down here, sitting on there. They get 1. They can't make it, essentially. So you're saying you want to get 2, but you're getting 2 in a way that helps Germany. So that's a bit of a trade-off. Allying with Germany is a little bit harder. For example, if at the start of the game you said, hey, I want to be allies with Germany, and Germany does its standard opening, right? So remember the standard English opening, in my opinion, is to go Northern Sea, North Sea, Edinburgh, because they're signaling, hey, I don't want to fight France, because again, it's more beneficial for England to be with France than for France to be with England. And then if Germany does its typical Denmark, Kiel, Ruhr move, what you would be doing, obviously this is simultaneous, you don't know, but if you're expecting the standard moves to be played, and you wanted to ally with Germany, you go English Channel, Picardy, and then Spain anyway. Because then what you're also suggesting is you're suggesting, hey, let's have Germany take 2, convoy to Wales, not London. Edinburgh would probably move to Yorkshire because it wants the convoy. And then this guy would probably just be trying to attack, probably cover. Oh, he'd probably try and bounce, go to London, expecting to bounce with his fleet, which the fleet isn't doing. It's sending a troop to Wales. So that's a way to get armies into London. And then, of course, this guy gets useless. He'll be in Norway, but who cares? Especially if you convince Russia to do its northern attack. So this is, see, now this position looks great because, while, yes, France only gets one build out of this. France builds army in Paris, I do believe. Would make sense to me. So this is a way for them to be, because then you have a Liverpool-Wales convoy. So if they cut that off, because now they're guessing. Because if they're here and they see this, or actually you'd actually probably build an army in Brest in that term, because then what you're doing is you're implying that you're either going to, right, because the North Sea is open, so what you'd have is a bounce here. You'd have a bounce, so that means that would be open. This one could support the German fleet in to put Germany there and start convoying over German guys. So it's very easy to attack England. Now England would have another build. They would get an army, presumably army in Liverpool. If you saw Wales, you definitely would have an army there for their extra build. Because keep in mind, in this scenario, in order to get onto the English one, you're not attacking London. So let's say you want to attack London. Let's say you are doing amazing diplomacy and you find a way into London. Well, this is how I'm going to show you how French would typically get into London. Again, keep in mind, you still want to be collecting Spain, irregardless. You should always move to Spain unless Italy does something, in which case you might be looking at no increase, which is sad. So what you might want to do some diplomacy to see if you can convince Germany to give you Belgium, especially if you think that there could be some colluding, so that way you get something like this. Germany still makes its 3, you at least get 2. That's an option. That depends on if you're doing the plan. If England does the ploy for, as we talked about, for England to do something like this, to do the Denmark, it depends. There's a lot going on. But let's say that Russia's not doing that. They're being typical. They're just gonna go for the bounce. And Russia's going south like normal. So in this position, with again England doing the typical moves, going Edinburgh, standard like that. So now you say, and you're in the English Channel, because again you've convinced England to not go to the English Channel, because it's mutually assured that neither of them should go to English Channel for them to be an alliance. You then say, okay, well, I need a convoy over into London, but we know that he's going to stop it. So what do? Essentially what you're going to do is you're going to say, hey, I'm going to, again, if you want to get into London, what you need to do is have, actually, it might not be possible to get into London, but, I got it. I got the way you do it. What you do is you say to England, you're talking to England, you say, hey, or you can even pre-plan this, but if you find a way to convince England to be okay with you being in the English Channel, and you tell them, I'm on the second move, I'm going to Belgium, right, and you say you're going to support your army in. If you're working with Germany and they have an army in, if they have this look, you'll say, hey, it's 2-2. I, at the very least, will want your Northern Sea support to get this army into Belgium. Right, because then that's 3-2. That would be ideal for England, because then England still gets its build there, and this can be convoyed when necessary, or even convoyed over. Right, that's something they could do. Or England could backstab and try and convoy into Denmark, but that'd be a little risky. So what you do is you convince that setup, but then actually from Picardy, English Channel into London, you take London, you let Belgium be given to Germany, because they've lost their support. This support's useless. This guy might be over here. It might have just stayed or moved to Yorkshire to defend. And we look at something like that, in which case, again, France is attacking England, except this time they get a build. This is a little bit harder to do as France. Again, if England is getting Italy to attack France instead of going to the east, which we'll talk about Italy last, probably, the hardest to play, then you might have some problems as France, especially because you want to get both. On your second move, if Italy has gone here, on your second move, you can feel free to take Portugal. You can feel free to take Portugal, because our next move you go back to Spain to get the point for Spain, and then do the bounce at Marseille. If you have to, it's a slower way to get 2, but you do get them both. It's really hard to stop France from getting both of those. You can do it, but it's hard. Now let's talk about some defenses. What happens when you're playing your game, and for example, you see something you really don't want to see, which is the London moves to English Channel, North Sea, then moves to Yorkshire, like that. right? So let's say this is Doomsday scenario. You've agreed to do your typical opening of Burgundy, Spain, and that, and you see, you have a guy who could, if he goes to Wales, if he moves the army to Wales, you know it's a convoy to Brest. Like, that's just a fact. Like, there's no reason for England to ever move to Wales unless you're convoying to Brest, because you can't reach London from Liverpool. So what that means is you have to move that fleet back to stop the convoy. And it means that this guy needs to move to Paris, actually. You need to go to Paris. You can't go to Belgium unless you've prearranged something with England, but if Germany's coming after you, it's hard. So you still need to go to Spain either way. You've bounced it, so that means you'll bounce it. That means this guy, who's in Burgundy, you have an option, depending on what Germany has done. If they've done typical opening, you might say, hey, Germany, I know we're fighting, but I'm willing to... Because this will probably be the move for England also. It needs to secure its 1. I'm sorry. Make sure you've seen that. It needs to secure its 1, so it'll do that. And then that's how it would typically go. Now, I'm running out of battery here, but that's okay. Because that's pretty much everything for France that you'd really be having to worry about. Essentially, the solution to this is you just pull everyone back and defend. You get your 1 build an army, move it over to help defend England. Against England. And that's typically what you do. So anyway, guys, thank you all so much for watching. As always, I'm Elwirfy, and I will see you guys next time.